so let's get started. Dileep is Head of Knowledge Management for ICRISAT in India. And are you going to come up here, or what's your... Yep. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. That should be
Good morning. Good morning. Very good. Now I can hear you all. Hope you had good breakfast and had good sleep. See, what I'm going to do, thank you, Chris, for inviting me, and also colleagues from Michigan State University having me here. And this morning, it's indeed a great opportunity and pleasure to be here and meet with you all. So I have been asked to make a presentation. In fact, it's more like an interactive session at the group discussion on mobile and open knowledge solutions for development. So we are trying to find out answers for a few questions. You can see here, what are the challenges in enabling knowledge transfers among and across various actors in agricultural value chain? What are the challenges in extension and education? Why I am saying extension and education? These are the systems used to play a key role during the Green Revolution time in enabling these knowledge transfers. In fact, though we achieved the Green Revolution that started in India with the dwarf gene varieties, but these are the two areas played a key role in advancing the food security during that time. So what's happening now? What are the major challenges? And is mobile technologies an answer to address these challenges? If yes, what kind of existing opportunities do we have to learn some lessons from them, and what are the emerging opportunities? Is this kind of projects are sustainable projects? So together we will find out the answers, and my colleagues from ILRI and also IFPRI and FAO, they're also contributing to that one along with you all. Please feel free to make comments and your contributions to find out answers for these questions. Based on these inputs, we will try to bring out a kind of paradigm and also execution framework to see how we can do that one. While we are discussing this one, and I'm also throw some light on these existing opportunities, and also what are the tools and technologies available to see these ideas into reality. Okay, with that note, let me start. Okay, before going into the details, let me introduce you all about the ICRISAT. That's an international crops research institute for the semi-arid tropics. And this is one of the CZ centers. CZIR is Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research. Though I'm based at India, but we have offices in Africa too. We have two regional centers, one in Niamey and the other one is in Nairobi. And other than that, we have centers in Lilongwe, Bulawayo, and Mozambique and Mali also. So our vision is a prosperous, food secure and resilient dryland tropics. We work on this one with a mission to reduce poverty, hunger, malnutrition and environmental degradation in the dryland tropics. We believe in a partnership approach. If our partners are doing something, we don't like to compete with them. We see like how we can strengthen their activities by bringing our expertise. At the same time, we do learn how they can complement to strengthen our activities. We believe in that partnership-based approach. And I work for a program area called Knowledge Sharing and Innovation. That's why I'm saying this one. And it actually provides a basis how we are doing at an institutional level. We can apply the same thing when we are working on these big questions. So we have 4 major program areas like resilient dryland systems, where we would look at this climate change issues, crop modeling, climate modeling, economic modeling, and also the soil health and other areas. We have markets and institutions and policies, mostly like a social science research, how we are bringing this research into practice. And also we see how we can bring the policy briefs out of this one. And the other programs, these are like more like a breeding programs like dryland cereals and the grain legumes. It covers everything like genomics and the plant breeding and other areas. So essentially what we do in knowledge sharing innovation, we see how best we can cut across all these program areas and transform these research results into data, information, and education services to enhance the research, improving operational efficiency, and also to facilitate capacitating the stakeholders, various stakeholders, to see the real impact from our investments by facilitating cultural exchange, information exchange, linkages through public-private partnerships. Essentially what we do, faster, greater convergence between research and its utilization in agricultural research for development. So why we are doing all these things, you can see a looming perfect storm. Like we have many more challenges now, like the climate change, land degradation, loss of biodiversity, food crisis, energy crisis, population explosion. If we can look at, I'm not covering and I'm not looking at all those things, if we can look at globally, and everybody knows, like maybe even last year if I attended on an average, the 10 conferences I heard like agriculture is at crossroads, and out of 10, maybe at least in 8 conferences. So why people are saying this one, the increasing globalization of commodity trade, even as net value addition is declining, and the climate change and other related events, faster spread of GMOs without adequate strengthening of institutional mechanisms. If you would look at the regional level, the issues, the Sub-Saharan Africa and other parts experiencing highly fluctuating production profiles and face a significant erosion in natural resource base. Number of hungry people increasing day by day, and the scenarios, if you can look at Asia, the changing scenarios like price fluctuations, farmer migration, often you see in the newspapers many farmers are suiciding because of the agriculture profession. And the recent report, the National Sample Survey of Organization from Indian government, they revealed 40% of the farmers would like to give up agriculture if they find alternative livelihood opportunities. Since they don't know what to do their livelihood, still they are in agriculture. This is not the case in India. This is not the case in other parts of Asia, and even we can see the similar kind of stories in Africa, and as well as even the land size is degrading, even in United States also, the number and the ratios. So, and at the same time, the rural poverty levels are not changing for the better. One side we are talking about these issues, and the other side we are also talking about the challenges. Like we need to triple the food production to meet the demands from the future generations. By 2050, we will have 9 billion population. And other than that, we are also talking about how we can increase the food production and feed the future food security issues and everything. Not only food security, and also the accessibility and affordability. These are the things we are talking about, that when these two are going in two different directions, in the middle, the research organizations, academic organizations, they are contributing from their research results how best we can address these challenges. The biggest challenge is these research results are not reaching to the primary producers and other stakeholders, whoever in need of that one. So how best we can unlock this knowledge from these laboratories and also institutions and bring them into the real world. So this is the main challenge. Like yesterday we were talking about the open knowledge solutions and how we can do this one. So the real challenge is the widening gap between the farm families and scientific knowledge creation and validation process, and the credit and insurance agency of all kinds. And even there are two statements. One is, if we can see from the Indian National Commission on Farmers, agriculture has becoming more and more and more knowledge intensive. And even the AgShare proposal, Chris, when I read yours, you also quoted about this World Bank statement. The farming must change from low-skill, manual labor-intensive industry to farming as a knowledge-intensive network sector. Because we have these opportunities, because we need to bring awareness on these GMOs and trade, legal, quality, and other areas, because we need to look into this one, and there is a strong felt need for a literacy movement and all these things. And also we need to enable knowledge transfers among and across various communities like scientists, educators, administrators, healthcare providers, technology enablers, and on local agroecological and socio-cultural conditions of each village, and also relating to various farming methods and techniques. So these are the two things. There is a need for this one. How do we do this one? That's what we need to look at that one. The first two questions I covered a little bit, and I would like to have your inputs, like maybe whatever I missed out. Like what are the challenges in enabling these knowledge transfers? What are the issues? And why I mentioned extension and education, if you can look at, even during the Green Revolution, these two systems played a key role, like bringing these research results to the field level. But if we can look at the scenario, the Indian case I can present here, the expert farmer ratio is 1:2000. We have 6,75,000 villagers, but we don't have 6,75,000 human beings, extension officers. And if you can look at the contact intensity, that's 40 minutes per farmer per year, and 3 hours per target farmer per year by farmer associations. So, and are we expecting these funding like from the government to enhance these infrastructure facilities or the human resources? No, because the investments from the state and federal agencies are diminishing day by day. So how do we fill this gap? Like these are the major two challenges, inadequate infrastructure and the human resources. So how do we address these challenges? Any answers? Any inputs or any suggestions? Oh, in whatever the way, like these thoughts, comments. Like, do we need to invest more funding, or do we need to bring more funding, or encourage this state and federal agencies?
My first thought is to look at where you can leverage other resources. So in some countries, you're dealing with ag depots that serve as a source of education and product for producers. So if there's a way to bring extension closer to the work that the ag depots are doing and make them a more collaborative partnership, that might help and not then put such strain on trying to find 675,000 people.
So these IT products and the new actors, I can say. Any other input?
I also think that the private sector is playing a big role in extension more and more, certainly in Africa. When the private sector, especially large-scale agribusiness firms, are really interested in a product, they will set up outgrower schemes. They will finance extension. But this brings up all kinds of social questions about what kinds of commodities are being produced for what market and what the social impact is. But corporate agriculture is playing and filling a big gap right now, for better or worse.
Thank you. And even we need to see the linkages between private and public agencies, or completely we need to depend on the corporate agriculture. Yeah, the public-private partnerships also we need to explore. Okay. Any more? This is good. Like, oh yes. Oh yes. So the lady on the table, she rightly pointed out, because we don't bring many more resources, because the state and federal agencies, they are not in that position to bring many more resources or investments to increase the human resources or to strengthen this infrastructure. We need to see the alternative ways. The IT products or the ICT opportunities, information and communication technology. So I don't get into the discourses like what is IT and ICT. We can figure out that one from the Google also. This is where we can see the mobile has a role. The mobile phones has a role. But the question is like maybe how do we do these things? Where is Peter? Peter, can you share your ideas and thoughts?
Can I share my ideas and thoughts?
He is my counterpart from Hillary.
But I'm gonna be very quick.
Yeah, very quick, 2 minutes.
2 minutes, and I have a PowerPoint even to share my thoughts. Where is my PowerPoint?
Wonderful.
Actually, it's not my PowerPoint. This morning, very early, because I'm still on at Abbott time, I woke up and thought, what on earth can I say that's going to be useful? And so I asked a few colleagues, which is always the best thing to do, you know. If you don't know something very well, ask somebody else. So I spoke, we use a thing called Yammer in the CGIR, kind of like a kind of a Facebook for places. And we have a project called M-Kisan in India, which is looking at mobile phones and research and agriculture with CAB International, Handigo, ILRI, and a few others. And I said to them, basic question, how do we connect our formal knowledge that we have in all our repositories with mobiles and farmers? I kind of threw it out and said, what happened? So my colleague came back, Sharbendu from CABI, and you may read what's there, but he said, yes, the formal knowledge, we can capture it. It can flow to the mobile channels if we do it properly, without need for major reinterpretation, resulting in learning and behavior change. So he says, yes, we can do it. We can take our repositories, get it to farmers. And what's fabulous, the farmers can give us instant feedback through phones. So I said, well, who does all of this? What's the business about interpretation? I couldn't quite see the knowledge of my repository getting into the hands of farmers. So he came back and said, well, it all depends, blah, blah. What's interesting is that you have to completely repurpose those messages into 165 characters. All right? And who does it? The big question. Transition, transformation. We talked about translation yesterday, and he talked about crowdsourcing. So he sees a huge possibility, but I think it's much more challenging than it seems, you know. I'm not sure how easy it will be for ILRI to repurpose its research reports into 165 character messages. So I have to think carefully how we do that. Maybe AgShare has the solution already. Then my colleague Pier Paolo Ficcarelli, who's in works for ILRI, he says, talking about ILRI, the livestock part, it's a Sisyphean task, repurposing, verification with local practitioners and validation by practitioners. He said it's an enormous task. And then the second message, he says, well, actually, it cannot be transferred as is. But it can be. But why would we do that? So, I mean, there's some questions here. So I have no answers for you. I'm just posting a few kind of thoughts and reflections. I said, oh, thanks very much. Really complex. What could AgShare do? What's one thing that AgShare could do? And I said, I pulled out his ideas, the automated harvesting. And then they said, oh, none of those are useful at all. None of them are proving useful. We just have to have effective and informed intermediaries, which is those people that he's talking about. That's quite challenging. And he has another message at the very end. He said, well, actually, I would just hire as many intermediaries as possible and give them performance contracts. And then Sharbendu came back and said, yeah, our intermediaries are okay, there's never enough, noise creep, and then this whole thing about finding the balance of information and intervention. So actually, I don't really know what it is that AgShare has to do, but I'm just sharing with you some feedback and thoughts about the 165 characters and how we would really, the task seemed, as my colleague says, Sisyphean. How on earth can we do this with crowdsourcing?
Yeah, we will be talking about that. Yeah, these are the inputs.
I will say all of that is very interesting, but 165 characters cost money to the farmer. So you better make sure that what you're providing he's interested in, not just translating or summarizing our briefs or our publications. It has to be something that really is useful for them. It costs money.
I think the way you might determine what's of interest to the farmer is to have it farmer-driven, right? The farmer sends in a question, and your extension agent answers the question. You could do that on the 165 characters, and then shares the question and answer with the rest of the community. So it's an open conversation between these people, not just back and forth between two, but one person asks the question, but everyone sees the answer. So that the role of your human intermediary is to be able to go in the background to the content and pull out the specific answer that's being requested. And that over time, as you start to see what the questions look like, they may be able to tweet out other information. Yeah. Precisely. He translated it, those red underlines there, right? I mean, was a question of distilling from the noise. So you have the human doing the distilling, but having it driven by actual questions that people are asking. So you take advantage of the openness to have it be a two-way conversation, not just I decide what I'm going to give you.
Oh, yes. That's very, very important. Any more? Okay. And, oh, yeah.
I'd just like to follow on that comment about being demand driven, and there was another comment here about the private sector. And what we're seeing in a number of projects where what we're doing through the extension service is actually providing the farmers and herders with the financial resources to procure their own extension services based on what their needs are. And we're seeing a change in the dynamic around who's actually delivering extension and the repositories. I worry about these kinds of systems that are sort of top down. We're overbuilding the repositories when really what's really needed for the extension service is not that broad and extensive and in-depth repository. The questions are not that complex. And we really need to get at what the farmers want and are demanding and looking at different ways of doing that approach to extension.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, these are really, really wonderful inputs. And one thing is clearly emerging, like the top-down approach. And the other one, like here on the table, she's suggesting like we also need to get the feedback. That's almost like a bottoms-up approach, like a need-based one. At the same time, we need to bring an awareness, like how we can combine all these things. That's a combination of top-down, bottom-up approach with a community mobilization. This is like a mantra. Can we note down this one? Yeah, maybe I can take that one. So this is what we need to, yeah, combination of top-down and bottom-up approach with a community mobilization. Okay. And even when you mention like maybe somebody post a question and we need to get the responses, that's more like a forum kind of approach. Yeah, even we have started those kind of activities when actually we were thinking about the ICTs, information and communication technologies. And we can see like maybe here how we are aggregating the information resources at various levels. You can see the different strands like at an international level and the sub-regional level, the state level, then at a block level, then ultimately to the village level. So how we are bringing these international resources, the knowledge resources from various agencies, and finally that's reaching to the farmers. And everybody is contributing to that one. But what are the main challenges, like unlike in United States, like even in developing countries, people, most of these farmers, and also the other stakeholders in the agricultural value chain, those are illiterate or semi-literate individuals. They can't read and write. And the other thing is, they speak several languages. In India itself, Dr. Maridia, how many languages the people speak in India, other than dialects? Okay. Yeah, how do we address those challenges? Because even what they have done in the first generation ICT for development approaches, like they have started with these village knowledge centers because they cannot afford these technologies, like they cannot buy a computer and they can't buy the other tools because the allied groups, they enjoy these facilities. That's why even there was a time people, they were talking about the digital divide and the other, all these areas. So, but we come up with a solution like Village Knowledge Center that provides a shared access to all these resources in a community center. And we house all these things, and the community center houses all these things and provides a shared access to these communities. But there are several things we need to follow. For example, like maybe when we are saying the community centers, still again we need to invest in the infrastructure. Though we are providing radio station, or maybe we are providing internet-based center, still we need to look at the internet centers and infrastructure facilities. And other than that, we need to capacitate the individuals. Like again, we are talking about the human resources. Who are going to operate these centers? And how do we capacitate? Because I know how the email helps me to communicate to my colleagues and other partners. But if I don't know how to use an email facility, then it's very difficult. So still I need to think about the capacity building and still need to invest in the human resources. It's not really addressing the issues. That's the time we have an opportunity. The advent of mobile phones provided is an opportunity to see whether we can address some of the challenges. Like the mobile phones, I'm not buying mobile phones and distributing to these people. For example, if you can see this slide, and here you can see this person, actually he given up everything, and we call them as the saints in India. He given up everything, no family, no wishes and nothing, but still he has a mobile phone. And these are the tribal people, stay away from the real world, but those people, they have the mobile phones. And this lady, she has the mobile phone. And these farmers, they have the mobile phones. So everybody is having a mobile phone, and even there were newspaper clippings that shows like the mobile phones are in more number than the toothbrushes in India. Even many more mobile phones than the toilets in India. And even the similar conditions in Africa also, I think Karen's paper provides those statistical details, how many mobile phones are there. So what are the existing opportunities? How we are using these mobile phones? Here we can see a couple of projects. One my colleague Peter mentioned about that one. And other than that, there are a couple of projects like in various parts of the world. Nokia Life Tools, Reuters Market Light, ITC Chopal, and IFCO Kisan Sanchar Limited, M-Krishi, A-Aqua, and Village Knowledge Centers, Virtual Krishi Vijnana Kendras, Airtel Money, and each project has a specific objective, like Airtel Money that actually facilitates the money transactions over the mobile phones, and M-Pesa in Africa, and these are the projects. But still, most of these projects, they focus on 3 different services. One is the education, and the other one is the agriculture and the entertainment. And 3 services, like one, they provide the weather information, and the other one is like an advisory. And then we can see here, and the crop information, that's on farm advisory or the production practices, and the market price. These are the 3 things they provide: weather, farm advisory, market price information. But still we can see they are doing this one with the SMS. They started with SMS, still the same thing, people they can't read and write. So how do we address these challenges? Any ideas? Like colleagues from Africa, you might have seen some of these opportunities. Peter? Carlos? Okay. I'm not explaining all these projects. We can figure out this information together.
Has there been any exploration of pre-recorded messages where someone can make a phone call and it's all verbal rather than text-driven?
Wonderful. It's so good, like maybe wonderful participants, because it's driving my presentation. That's what I'm talking about this one. So it's almost like set, like maybe previously I discussed it with you and asking about this one. Any more other?
I think from my experience, as we are looking at the ICT tools, we need to blend these ICT tools with some human interface. So for example, you talked about village knowledge centers or so on. We need to look at, because in the villages, there is this issue of trust. The community knowledge workers or somebody. Because farmers, tend to trust on information coming from. So along with the message you give it through the ICT tools, you got to bring some human interface. And one of the things that came out in India, I think there was a survey done over more than 700 or a million farmers. Where do they get their information? Whom do they trust? And most of that came out from other progressive farmers or other innovative farmers. So how do we blend this ICT tools with the human interface so that the information is then trusted?
That's wonderful. Even Peter mentioned the same point, like we need to look at the intermediaries, and also we need to look at the new actors. Who are these new actors going to be? And this is one point. But when the lady mentioned on the table, like we can use these pre-recorded messages, but how do we get to know like the pre-recorded messages, like I need to advise them today this is the weather, and otherwise maybe if I'm executing a vaccination schedule, like maybe today there are going to be an opportunity to go for the vaccination or something, or other livelihood opportunities, like maybe if I need to run a short course, I can send 1 or 2 minute audio messages like how do you select a better breed, or how do you go for a soil sampling test. And both information and the education opportunities, I can do that. Few I can pre-record them, and few I can't do that. And still, do I need to set up a recording theater for this one? No, we don't need to do that. So we have these technology opportunities. I'm going to introduce you to those 2 tools. What we are doing, in fact, like we are operating this one, and we use a platform called Voice over Internet Protocol Drupal. Yesterday they were talking about the Drupal, and there is a Drupal called VoIP Drupal. And what is this VoIP Drupal? We can come back to this slide. So the VoIP Drupal, it's a technical architecture. So what it does, we know the Drupal, that's a content management system, how we can bring the knowledge to the global community. At the same time, if we can combine this content management system with the call manager, like that's an asterisk server, and once we combine that one, we can get this kind of system. How does this work? Maybe can I get one mobile phone, because mine is on international roaming. Otherwise, maybe, maybe can you dial a number called 617 431 5767. Yeah, we will see.
Okay. Here, we'll put it on speaker.
Welcome to the Drupal hotline. Main menu. To join or create a conference call, press 1. To hear the weather report for your area, press 2. To send a test SMS, press 3. To record a message, press 4. To receive local weather by phone, please type your 5-digit zip code. It is currently 5 degrees Fahrenheit and Serenokimo. To repeat this report, press the star key.
Can we try somebody, like, can they record the message? We can see, like, one more try. Yeah, we need to record, like, we will see one record. We will start over again. Okay.
Somebody else want to try it? Or should we
Oh, maybe we can do that. Because you put some time limit. I'm nervous.
SMS, press 3. To record a message, press 4.
4.
To receive a call, please record your message after the beep.
You can record
When
the
done,
message.
press the pound key.
Hello, welcome from the MSU Open Knowledge Convening.
You said, hello, welcome from the MSU Open Knowledge Convening. To accept this
You have a
recording,
very good voice,
press 1.
Chris.
To record it,
And
Now,
once we
to start
record this
processing
one,
the
how we
recorded
can
file,
operate, how we
call
can
back.
execute this one, like it also provides a facility called, we can store the message in a repository. I'm using the same mobile phone, and I'm recording a message, and I can recheck that one also, like whether I recorded correctly or not, validate that one. Then I can store that one in a repository to repurpose that one. We mentioned that one, but we need to validate that, whether it's a correct message or not. And how the new actors are going to play a role. We also discussed about, like, maybe in developing countries, people speak various languages. How do we address that one? That's another issue. Here we are getting these messages, that's like an interactive messages in English. So how do we do that one? Like, let me show you, like, maybe how we are doing this one. Usually we stop this one by 9 o'clock to not entertain, because people go to bed by the time, most of these communities. Let's see whether it works or not.
సందేశ సేవలో మీకు స్వాగతం. మీ పేరు మరియు పాస్వర్డ్ తనిఖీ చేయబడుతుంది. దయచేసి
It's validating my mobile number.
రికార్డ్ చేయండి. ఆపై హ్యాష్ నొక్కండి.
Can you say something?
This is Akshare knowledge sharing workshop.
Yeah, see, we heard that one in a local language. How does this work? We can create a mechanism by writing a script, and there are predefined scripts available on the voice over internet protocol Drupal. So what it does, if my number, mobile number, belongs to a specific region, I can set the same language. Like if that's a francophone countries, I can hear the same tone. If that's an English-speaking country, I can hear that one. If that's an India, each state they speak a different language. Like maybe that can be set according to the number. Wherever I go, I get the instructions according to my registration to that particular location. So in that way, like I can record these messages. Once I record these messages, I can facilitate mobile to mobile communication. You can see like these are the opportunities like expert to farmer, and I can create some communities here. Like this is like a specific community, paddy community, otherwise like some wheat community or sorghum community, PGNP community. Once I record the message, I can send that message to a specific community by following the instructions. At the same time, I can also save that one in repository for repurposing. Like whoever the local individuals, they can pick up that one and they can resend that one according to the needs. So that's one thing we can follow that one. And the other thing is like farmer to expert. Farmers, they can send the feedback, and if they have any questions, whichever they haven't received from that day, they can also ask the question. And the other one is expert to expert or to peer-to-peer communication. We can see that one. And what kind of approaches we are using here, mobile to web and web to mobile. Like once we can have that one here, you can see like maybe weather report, click here for the weather report. If you click there, it asks like you provide a number. Once I provide the number, it calls that number, we can have an interaction also. It's all like maybe how we are customizing or configuring to fulfill our needs.
So there's, if you're using the web for storing content, then that opens the question, well, who owns the copyright, right? And is that open knowledge or closed knowledge? Can you talk about that dimension?
Okay. When we are storing this content, everybody, they cannot store the content. Like each person, they must have an account. And when I process this one, it's validated my mobile number. Once it's validating, the message stored on my name. Okay, and I get the recognition, like this message has been created. But the committee who validates these messages, whether these are right or wrong, and they actually see that one, the accuracy, then they decide whether they need to keep in the repository or they need to delete. Once these messages are available, this is pretty much open. Anybody can reuse that one. Yeah, they follow this Creative Commons license, like maybe, yeah, once it's in the repository, that's pretty much open. Like that's more like a repurposing. It's like a wiki, like maybe once that's there, and we can reuse that one. Yeah. Any other questions before we move on to the other one? Okay.
On the Twitter feed, I think Emma had a role to play in this, but on the Twitter feed, we do have a colleague who is from India I'm looking for support to propose an OER in agriculture in the upcoming National Agriculture Education Project in India. So he would like to leverage what is going on here in this room for something that he can do more with. So maybe we can connect you and Dileep back together.
I think so.
Yeah. Do you know who it is?
I know.
Okay. Yeah.
Sridhar, good. See, the other project, what he's talking about, that one, India, like now, Indian government, that's an Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that's more like a USDA in India. They will be receiving a project from World Bank that's called National Agricultural Education Project. And they are giving very good amount of money to focus on like how they can bring these open access repositories that strengthen the education system, essentially to contribute to the sustainable agriculture. Because way back in 60s and 70s, similar kind of program was started by World Bank to bring the land grant system to Indian continent. This is also in the similar way. Now they are refocusing on that one, how they can enhance the capacities, how they can strengthen the curriculum. Altogether, that's a different dimension, like the curriculum, because 30 years before or 40 years before, whatever the curriculum, we have created, still we are using the same thing. There are no changes. Like how best we can change or bring some kind of dynamism in the curriculum by integrating the research results. This is where we need to look at that one. That's how like the best curriculum we can make it available. So it's like an execution method, like maybe what we will be looking. We need to look at the needs and mobilize the resources, capacity building. These are the processes, and the content and connectivity play a key role. Those are like functional factors. But at the same time, we need to look at the other factors, like what are the influencing factors. I can touch base one or two, like the legal factors, like the VoIP, the voice over internet protocols that's allowed in United States. But in India or in African continent, in few countries of Africa, the VoIP are not allowed to use. If even in US, they can set up using Google, like the Google Talk, they don't need to pay for these mobile phone call charges. But the good thing is, like in India and Africa and other parts of the world, the incoming is free, unlike in United States. I think US Cellular, probably the incoming is free here. Those are like issues we need to look at that one, the telecom regulations and everything we need to follow according to the location and location. And the other aspects also, socio-cultural and these aspects, we need to look at that one. It's almost like a cycle. When we start the project, executing these activities, we need to look at what works best or what is not working. So in that one, we need to fine-tune the process and make this is more like a sustainable project. It's evolving like a sustainable project. But there are few areas we can look at that one, like mobile and open access repositories. And Luz, you are expert in open access repositories. Can you throw some light on that one? Like, is there any existing projects and mobile and open access repositories? Or
we do not work directly with farmers. We work with policymakers, and actually there is this dual situation because they have to be scholarly and produce a scholarly work. At the same time, they have to communicate with policymakers that do not read their scholarly work. So there's an approach of doing briefs, but I doubt that the briefs also reach the target audience in the way that is expected. So there have been some approaches with publications as big as the Global Hunger Index, where it is in the repository, not only the text split by country, but also the data that defines the status of hunger and malnutrition per country. And there has been this rush of making it better per country. So there's a mobile application for the Global Hunger Index that people are using to see the status of their country regarding the indexes of hunger and malnutrition. So in a simplified way, using the data and pushing it into the mobile, so they show if they're in an extreme or middle range or they're okay. So those are the kind of approaches that can be done, is to get from a big publication and try to get the points that can reach certain audiences.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. See, one thing, like maybe when we are talking about these things, that's more like open access repositories and the publications. Just we are trying to digitize these traditional libraries. Like when I enter into a library, olden days, like I used to figure out a book location by following either title index or author index. Those are like search index or subject index. But when that comes to the digitization, like how we can digitize that one, it's more like the Google follows the indexing search engine. That's a Web 2 approaches. And the Web 3, what it talks like the semantic web search engines, like maybe you can see here how this mapping kind of structure is visible. Like it follows three areas: topic, association, and the occurrence. For example, like maybe there is a PGNP, that's the area, subject area, we are looking at that one. And how many topics there? Like maybe production practices, insect pests, pathology. So these are like virtual racks. Once I have a virtual rack and the people can contribute to that one, I can capture everything in an app and can make the people to download that one, it can be viewed very easily. It's just popping up. Like for example, if I see USA in a globe, and when I click the USA, it pops up, and there are states, and if I click on Michigan, it pops up, and there are other places we can see that one. So these are some apps we can look at that one. In the similar way, probably we need one strong app for this particular area also. It's very confusing. So once I download the app, maybe that can direct to me to reach here. So these are the applications we can look at that one. And the other one is open educational resources. That's better we can see how we can use the mobile-based applications like in the lifelong learning. So we have seen like the voice messages even that can be created by the students or the scholars in those particular locations. It's almost like we are providing some kind of residency. If you can look at the medical education in earlier days, before 70s, before the Flexner model, Abraham Flexner, he's the one proposed the medical colleges should be associated with the hospitals. Earlier, there were no colleges associated with the hospitals. In the similar way, how we are sending students to these fields and making them to understand the real world problems, and still we are connecting with the faculty members to educating them how to solve these real world problems. This is more like a practical oriented approach that's very catchy in the action. Yes, I'm done. And the other one is the value chain approaches, farm to fork, and we have several apps we can look at that one, the soil health and everything. So finally, after looking at all these things, what is emerging? Like maybe we need to have a knowledge repository that may be AgShare or something. We need to figure out a mechanism that's like how we can aggregate the knowledge from various sources. That's like an acquisition through the internal partners or the external partners or the global partners. Once we have that one, the knowledge modeling, that's more like a, like even we can see like the SCOM and other learning technology standards helps us to understand how we can model that knowledge and feed into the various innovative approaches to reach to the intended recipients. There are some research opportunities, but the main things what we must need to understand, we should have a consortium of partners who can facilitate this one, and also we need to validate that one. Some points we already captured, and most of these knowledge sharing approaches or open knowledge solutions must build an assessment of the needs as locally defined by the local people. Thank you. Sharing the right information with the right people at the right time through the right channel. That's what we believe in.